possibility and the likelihood is high. All these drop hints, you know, I report on them every once in a while, especially if it's about something with these ones.
These are all conflicting rumors, which is the issue that I have with them as a story. It's fun to talk about, but the Bloober's not a Japanese company. You know, no, it's a Japanese company. No, it's Bloober. No, it's this company. No, it's this company. They said a non-Japanese. But the first one says Japanese.
Well, the one that I read here said that they're looking to work with non-Japanese company. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, according to the outlet, it is a prominent Japanese developer company.
So all of these rumors are conflicting with each other, and so it's just like, look, it's important to talk about, but this is not a real story yet. And we will let you know when it is real. Right now, it's just a fun rumor to talk about.
Okay, I hope it happens. You know, Silent Hill, you know what? I don't know. Maybe not, because you got to have the talent behind it. The reason why we all like PT on our PlayStation 4s, they got deleted on our PlayStation 5s and inaccessible is because it was made by Kojima and because it was made by, you know, people that actually give a shit about the license. And so we may not get that much ever, but I hope we get something similar.
Me too.
I love horror games. Good horror games.
Good ones.
We'll have to see this year if we get any.
Yeah, what about the medium video out this week too? So curious about that.
Nice. Excellent.
All right, that's it. That's all we got.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I want to thank our sponsors, honey. Download it, install it, you're saving. I think the game, from what I've played, I'm not sure they can get Masterpiece unless they completely revamp but I did play a long time ago.
So it's been pushed to August 31st. The team has been working on various additions, including compelling in-game features. The delays to ensure those features and fine-tuning to the launch date. Good.
They have been doing a great job of development and releasing in January, February. It would get a lot of fanfare. Shit. There's shit around right now. And nothing on it.
Well, there are no PlayStations either, still. And that's important because...
Access granted. Initiating Forge Protocol. Select preferred weapon configuration.
Drift and controller drift and all these other things. PS5 currently has them. And some people got a day one issue. And a lot of people are like, yeah, no. He's on PlayStation. I want one, it's okay, buy one.
Adaptation authorized. Engaging in warrior customization.
Apparently it's not an easy fix. The new PlayStation 5 DualSense Stereo has revealed potential causes of controller drift. So we got a whole video where they took apart the controller, and it's just according to the DualSense as well as the DualShock 4, the Xbox One, Xbox One controllers all use the off-the-shelf joystick hardware with a long history of predictable issues. So it's just that you got lazy and cheap with stuff that you shouldn't get cheap with because Nintendo's getting sued for this kind of stuff. They had issues with it in the past, and so should have known better. Yeah.
Shit. You didn't use the cheap one you told me to. Trick the cornerstone.
Yeah, so the potentiometers, they're just using it's the same ones that have issues for years. And there also could be a stretch spring that can do it. There's a bunch of other things. Contaminants, if you get dirty
Good day.
So there's a bunch of different things that can cause this issue, and a lot of people are having them with a lot. Now, there's not even a lot of people with PlayStations right now, so the fact that there's so many already, the system just came out, this does not quite look good for Sony. I would expect another class action lawsuit for that kind of thing, too.
Well, okay, fix it.
Well, these controllers are cheap, right? The PS5 controllers for $80.
Yeah, they're expensive.
Yeah, so it's not like they're like, cool, we're giving it to you for free. It's like they're charging me $80 for these things. But
Oh, yeah, it's certainly positioned as a premium controller.
Yeah. So, this week, Eurogamer reported on a U.S. law firm that's filed a class action against Sony for alleged previous DualSense drift, and I imagine these will go into review too. So, no comment from Sony yet, but they're gonna have to. Yeah.
They sound like a company that previously tried to sue them before, and it didn't work
2 Resurrected. Remember how good Warcraft 3 was when they released that thing out? Well, apparently they learned. I'm scared. Yeah, I'm terrified. So it's apparently a new team. Apparently they've learned from their mistakes. They've done a bunch of interviews where they said that we're not going to do any of those things. We're not deleting the old Diablo 2. We're not, we're even leaving a lot of the bugs and exploits in the game. So you have everything that you love.
I'll see you later.
Except for the item grouping that they've taken. So Diablo 2 Resurrected includes a remaster of the 2000 original game and Lord of Destruction with high resolution 3D visuals. It looks great. Yeah, I love Diablo 2. This is back when I loved Blizzard and they were my favorite video game company. The reason I hate Blizzard and I hate them is because they used to make video games that I love. Now they make trash and they literally make good money from the game with Overwatch. So talking about Blizzard. But this is back from the time, and so they're like, oh, we don't know how to make good games anymore. We'll just remake it. Well, yeah, but they did that with Warcraft 3, and that's and so maybe, but if so, and you want to play with me, great. I'll play for sure. Because I love this stuff. Yeah, it's good. It's a good game. Put hundreds and hundreds of hours of my friends have into the game. I never put my extended period of time into Diablo 2. I go over and find out and do play on that. So it was a great opportunity for somebody like me to really never got like try it out. In 2021, so that's what it is. Yeah, it's the end of 2021. There's also a bunch of other announcements. We're getting Skyward Sword for Switch. Yeah. Great. Splatoon 3. Cool. Overwatch 2 is not coming out this year. That was announced, so oh no, I can't play Overwatch 1.5. Plants vs. Zombies Battlefield May reveal. Star Wars Hunter is announced for Switch. Oh, what is Star Wars Hunter? Always has the logo right now, which makes me very disappointed. In 3 years. We learned about a new competitive free-to-play online shooter on the Switch set between Star Wars Episode 5 and 6 and 7. A very brief trailer shows the holograms of various combatants from the red lightsaber wielding characters and a variety of small figures. So it's a free-to-play game being developed by Zynga, known for its social and mobile games. They should have said known for its micro. Yeah, known for content games. Their generally focuses on
anything Star Wars, I pay attention. I perk me up. I'm like, yes, what are we looking at? Can I have a dark side game? Is it a fucking six love up in here? I would love, like that dark magic and that something like that. And here it looks like you might be able to play, some Sith type characters.
On a Zynga mobile game, it's going to look
right, exactly, right. It has to be like done well in the vein of, say, Warzone, or say, Apex Legends. But no, this Squadrons has pretty, no microtransactions. This one, bet your fucking ass. Star Wars Hunters is going to have microtransactions. So, looking for maybe another action fit from me. Just stay tuned because when this is announced and they start selling $290 fucking tauntauns, then I will be fucking.
Is it a real one?
Yeah.
There's a real one. Don't buy one.
All right, sure, yeah.
All right. Well, the most important announcement this week is the Titan edition.
So that's the collector's edition. Comes in a big box.
That would have been
Sleeping bag, but I thought that's fucking genius. That's fucking genius.
The most important video game investor in probably the last 30 years is getting back in the gaming industry. After his first attempt to break into the gaming industry as a console manufacturer, Soulja Boy is ready to break out the brand.
What? No!
Soulja Boy consoles is something we tried in 2019.
Superman that hole!
Superman. It was like the
Why don't you go make your own console? Stop hating.
He
Stop playing, hey, yo.
Give me this container right here. I'll get it out there. This here.
Playing. What? Are you kidding me? This is hilarious. Is this allowed to talk about? There you go.
So when he first put out his first console, he was met with another piece of decision. It was like stealing He was never cease notifications from major companies in the business. Well, the rapper took Hot Chuck's former Nintendo president Reggie when he said he made him retire. Look where he's claiming that he made Reggie retire. After numerous jokes and utter silence, it looks like Clover was ready to break out into the business once more.
Why is this not available?
You're not playing this up or later?
Yeah. You need to work with your business connected with that. So, yeah, call me when that's on the
It is. They do sell them at the flea market. It's all the terrible bulk kiosk. But this is every Nintendo game and Sega game in it, and it's $300. Alright, well that's the biggest story I got.
Jones, your boy, is knocked off the ribbon. Jones, the boy, is knocked off the ribbon. That's where you would find the boy. Coming to a flea market near you.
I love this place.
All the pirate DVDs.
Hey, they got great DVDs. Great flavors.
There's always a love advertisement.
That's the Mexican blend.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Oh, yes. Big old turkey.
Alright, anything else you want to talk about? Or we
This
end
little
it
shutdown.
Last week was a good comment from him. Did you see it?
Let me check.
I watched it, and it,
What week? Shut the hell up. Why are you so stuck?
As I is a physician and
Check it out. Why did you like it?
hurts so much. It won't.
I know. Don't worry. Azais will make you
so watch this Mortal Kombat movie.
What? It's a pumped. Like, you know, obviously. No, man, pumped. I'm pumped.
Yeah, it looks good.
It looked good. That looked good. What did you hate about it? Did you hate the arms exploding?
No,
Did
that
you
was
hate
cool.
the brutalities? Did you hate the fucking...
The only thing I want is a friendship.
This looks like jujitsu, more like jujitsu than a
No, it fucking doesn't. The original Mortal Kombat was a good
What have I missed?
Jujitsu had
What
no
must I do?
jujitsu, okay?
Zais?
This looks like a faithful adaptation of
You have your hands full.
Because this,
Yes,
you're a welcome
that's
sight.
the one new
The
character
only one I've
like
had in some time.
So many sick.
pull out of there that
I'm
you
surprised that anything can spread in a place as advanced as this.
It's shocking. Nothing I have tried will cure the sick or stop the pathogen spreading.
get in the middle.
I've lost so many already.
You got your good, you got your really bad, and maybe you'll have your...
When did you first notice people were getting sick?
At the start of this cycle, it began quite slowly and I didn't think much of it. But then the cases grew rapidly day by day. The more that fell sick, the faster the pathogen spread.
It's the shit in this trailer, and the problem with that is like trailers.
You seem really worried. Have you ever seen a sickness like this before?
No. There are many odd phenomena during this cycle. Plants dying, strange insects, and animal attacks. I worry about what this could signify.
Don't worry. We'll find a way to stop the sickness. Tell me what you need.
Well, there was a device being worked on by a scientist named Consus. Its intention was to rapidly heal injuries.
Once.
His device is missing. Scientists here have tried to replicate it based on the schematics, but it's still in the experimental phase. And it hasn't been tested on humans.
So it may not work.
And that's not the biggest issue. Poseidon has outlawed the use of our technology on humans. I fear that if we don't act quickly, the pathogen will spread.
Oh, yeah, yes. You enjoyed the Green Goblin phase versus Stephen King, Maximum Overdrive.
In Athens, when the plague spread, Hippocrates thought the only option left was to burn the body.
You're talking about murdering innocent people.
It's mercy, Azais. Better than even...
No, we are not barbarians. We don't waste precious life if there is a chance it can be saved. Please find the device and...
Fine. We'll do it your way. Tell me where it is, and I will.
We'll find the device in one of the issue laboratories in the Consus archive.
Let's not argue over whether it's fucking gonna be accurate. It's fucking Twisted Metal.
Yeah, but it's a pretty clear Twisted Metal story. The guy who's in charge says,
I've brought the glowing cloth you've asked for.
It's a nanotech matter regenerator, in fact. But you have it. I can't believe it.
Adaptation with Will Arnett. Cool. I like it. Mark Foreman and Peter Sapato. PlayStation studio head Herman is also.
Now then, let's see what this thing can do.
Decisions have been fully revealed at this time. Twisted Metal, cool ice spread shit.
Azais, what the fuck did you do?
I thought I had calibrated correctly. Oh no, what have I done? I killed this poor human. The device doesn't work, and you stole it against Poseidon's laws. What do we do now?
This device is dangerous. Maybe Poseidon outlawed it for a reason. I don't think you should use it on anyone else.
I was so hopeful, but you're right. This device isn't ready to be used on live subjects. All I've done is add to the pain and suffering.
Some things can't be fixed with devices or intellect. There are problems even the issue can't solve.
I suppose all I can do is return this device to the laboratory and make sure the victims are comfortable till the end.
Better than anything that you showed them. It's better than some of them your bad movies, but it's not as good. He's gonna start.
And we need all the money that we can save because apparently we are producing an OJ movie. So install Sci-Fi channel, please call us. But yes, so click those links down below. Install Honey on your systems. Start saving money today. Completely free, no reason not to. And thank you so much. Watch our first video. This is 1 of 2, and we'll see you guys on the next video.
Finish your mid-fade without pausing. Try YouTube Premium on us. In style, uninterrupted.
Hey guys, welcome back to another video. If you're new on my channel, hi and welcome. My name is Madgirl, and Trisha Paytas was on a roasting spree recently on her TikTok, and pretty much everyone from Jeffree Star to Hair by Jay, Shane Dawson, Ryland Adams, and David Dobrik got a piece of the burn. Trisha was actually reacting to different issues that came up with these people, and we're gonna talk all about it starting with Jeffree Star. If you guys remember not too long ago when Trisha Get On happened, and Trisha was calling out Jeffree Star's hairstylist, Hair by Jay, for the horrible things he said about her on camera, Trisha said Jeffree also said the same things about her behind the scenes, and Jeffree responded publicly, saying the things Hair by Jay said did not represent him, and that he already reached out to Trisha privately to apologize, but Trisha didn't respond to him. Well, Jeffree also alluded to firing Hair by Jay over that issue, because he tweeted, "Good morning to everyone, except the guy that used to do my hair." So even if it wasn't an explicit "I fired Hair by Jay," referring to his hairstylist as someone who used to do his hair conveyed the message that he had fired him. But then, a couple days ago, Hair by Jay posted several pictures of Jeffree to his Instagram stories and made it very clear in the captions that he was still making Jeffree's hair because in one of the captions he said, hair colored and styled by him. I wasn't shocked personally because, hey, it's Jeffree Star. Lying comes with the territory when it's with him, but people told Trisha about the Hair by Jay developments, and here's what Trisha had to say.
Everyone's been tagging me in this about Jeffree sleazing Hair by Jay. Obviously he is. Jeffree's the one who said all those vile things. Jay was just stupid enough to repeat and confirm it online because he's his little minion. But Jeffree is also just as vile, so obviously trash is going to keep trash. She was just trying to save face for a couple days, I guess. The most offensive part about Jay's rant was him saying, if we, him including himself and Jeffree, you're the hired help.
Jesus is Lord!
Don't forget. But he said if we called her, saying him and Jeffree called me, that I'd be dying to hang out with them. And Jeffree called and pleaded, trying to keep some sort of friendship or some sort of like cool relationship online. I would never hang out with these two people again if you paid me $1 million. They're the trash scum of the internet, and it's been proven time and time again because they're popular, they get away with it.
I would have said Trisha calling her by Jay the hired help, regardless of it being a statement of fact, was putting him down, and normally that wouldn't be cool. But after hearing the vile things Hair by Jay said about Trisha on camera, I said it's fair game. Trisha can say whatever she wants about him, and I'm just gonna keep it moving because if you're ready to bash someone publicly, you should be ready for a response in kind. Moving on to Ryland Adams. Trisha brought Ryland in when she talked about Shane and Ryland continuing to support Jeffree Star, and in her opinion, she felt like it was because he was making them money.
These are the people that Shane and Ryland continue to support for that dollar. Ryland is shitty merch using Jeffree's merch company, but okay, cool. Trash recognized trash. Double plays with double.
Digastis, welcome back. I'm glad you could be here to witness this momentous occasion.
Why are the Archons in chains?
I invited my dear siblings here for one final lesson in leadership.
It looks like an execution to me.
Every experience in life should be a lesson, including death. You've been to the underworld, so I know you understand what these fools do not.
Through 14 stories. We work for a division of the government that investigates scientific anomalies.
You asked me to help the Archons. I did. Their problems are solved.
Their problems only existed because they couldn't perform the duties their roles demanded.
You're going to murder your brothers? For what?
For order, for peace, for Atlantis.
For Atlas, you mean?
I am the rightful heir to Atlantis. I should be the Digastis. I cannot defy Poseidon's will, but these fools don't deserve their power. I'll be a better Archon in their stead.
Merch is the kind of merch that literally makes me cringe.
Once Poseidon finds out what you've done, she won't let you get away with it.
That is our way.
So,
The way of progress. You are not one of us. I've seen your compassion to those who dwell in this city. Perhaps our ways are not as perfect as Poseidon thinks they are.
Parents do what they think is best. It doesn't mean they're always right. We have to look after each other, no matter what we're told.
12 years, you know you lied about me.
Why? Because I respect your decision.
Hair by Jay and trash. You're the scum of the earth, and one day rain will come and wash the scum away.
I thought Trisha was a little harsh on Ryland, and while I understand that she was upset with him over the entire still sticking with Jeffree Star stuff, I kind of feel like Ryland was caught in a difficult situation. Because
if you're going to one day rule the city, Cassandra, you're going to have to learn a very important lesson.
This from the outside, looking at the
That's what I get for helping you?
So I'm thinking
a
that
lecture?
if Shane didn't want to say anything, Ryland will also want to be supportive of Shane, who is his partner.
Nothing in Atlantis is what it seems at face value.
So I just feel like it was kind of a difficult situation
and those that
for
call
him.
it home
And because he was the one that was still on the internet, he was not getting all the pressure to address everything. And he couldn't like publicly come out and say, oh hey, we don't want to say anything, we want to support Jeffree Star. So he just kind of came up with something. Now I'm not defending Ryland. I understand that he's an adult. I'm just saying that I still understand the position that he was in because Shane is his partner. So this is kind of more personal to him than his friendship with Trisha. If she had said all of these things about Hair by Jay, honestly, I would have kept him moving like I said. But for Ryland, I just felt like he was a little bit harsh. Like Ryland seems to be getting the brunt of her anger right now. But But I don't know. I just thought it was a little harsh on him. Let me know what you think in the comment section.
I can hear them speaking to me.
Do you think that Ryland deserves this level of roasting? I'm really interested in knowing your thoughts on that. When someone asked Trisha if she was ever going to speak to Shane Dawson again, her answer was no, and she said it was because she felt betrayed by him, which I guess is understandable given what happened between them.
I'm gonna say no, and it's not just because of the Jeffrey situation and him not believing me or just, you know, at least supporting me. Like, it actually has nothing to do with that. It's the stuff that came out after from multiple people, including voice recordings of Shane just like mocking me and talking.
Like my pride and soul, Blue Eyes White Dragon, and its powerful evolution.
Shit on me. Like, that level of trust is broken, and it's like still something that like I just feel in shock about. Like, I just can't believe it's real. But obviously, like, hearing his voice like talk about me was like insane, because I've actually never said.
Now that I have the ESU device forged, we need to move quickly.
On camera.
You distract Atlas while I sneak into his private chambers.
More
sneaking.
After Poseidon outlawed human experiments, Atlas confiscated the device and kept it. That device theoretically could add a third helix to my DNA.
I've seen what these ESU devices can do. It's not pretty.
The science is sound.
Moving on to the
And
final
I even found evidence of tests being done on humans that looked promising. In previous cycles, of course, before Poseidon outlawed experimentation.
But it seems this time it's actually deserved, because this is what Trisha said about him.
Talk about more about
Just tell Atlas the truth.
David Dobrik.
You have good intentions.
If he's afraid of his enemies hurting me now, what will he think of me undergoing this procedure?
In a vlog and on
Besides,
camera,
he
something
can't
he said
break
himself he did
Poseidon's
not
law.
consent to.
I'm not sure a good Castis
not
goes
once but
behind the
twice,
back of an Atlantean
made out
archon.
with Seth
I've been preparing
without
for
his
this my
consent.
entire
Even when he said he was
life.
uncomfortable
Don't
to one in
worry.
the vlog, asked him
Just
to take it
keep
down.
Atlas talking while
That's
I'm in
literally
these chambers.
I don't think we have anything in common. What are we supposed to talk about? The weather?
Atlas is a jealous lover, and he's already threatened by your role as
They don't have to
Castis.
apologize.
Why not
People
play
are
to
just
that
distracted
advantage?
with so many excuses
Whatever
from
you
it.
do, don't
Actually,
mention my
if this was a female, the cause for alarm would be like blaring.
Everyone knows it's lonely at the top, Castis.
Like,
Let's
don't
go.
need that money you made from the videos. Make something right. They ignore his phone calls. You come up with excuses for him. Trash. They get away with it because they're white, rich, and privileged.
That's everything that went down on
Studied this
Trisha's TikTok. That's everyone she called out on why. Let me know your thoughts on the entire thing in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. As always,
It's the
like
should
and
that
share with
worries
your
me.
friends.
Remember,
Subscribe, support my
whatever you
channel,
do,
and
don't
stay up to
reveal
date
my
with the latest
political plans to
drama.
Atlas.
Shout out to my amazing patrons. You guys are awesome. I appreciate your support more than I can ever say. And I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.
GameFly gives you access to thousands of games and movies. It's just 54 cents a day for a month of video game rentals. 77 cents gets you 2 discs at a time.
It's Versailles, 1682. You're King Louis XIV, and you fall in love with a little piece of land where a beautiful chateau is tucked away in the lush suburban forests of France. What starts out as a cozy hunting chateau becomes an all-inclusive city unto itself. From the outside looking in, Versailles seemed like Xanadu, but in reality,
Could trick
the living
Atlas into
conditions
thinking
were
you and
far
I are
from
closer
perfect.
than we are.
Today we're going to find out what it was really like to live
What's
in
there
the
to
Palace
trick?
of Versailles.
You know what I mean.
Before we get started,
Yes.
be sure to subscribe to
Maybe
Weird History and
Atlas
let us know what the
envious
store
would
here on
certainly be
King
a
would
good
like to hear more
distraction.
about. Now, let's voyage to this malice at the palace. Life at Versailles was a highly ritualized existence. Even the simple act
What
of the
are you
king and
doing?
queen getting dressed in the morning
With
was a
her,
spectacle.
no less.
During the lever,
Ruby
also
Castis
known
and
as
I
an
were
official
just taking a
awakening,
stroll, and
high-ranking
I remembered
courtiers
I
and
left a
royal
book on
family
Atlantean
members had
secret
specific
history
morning
here.
tasks,
She'd
such
like
as
to
handing
borrow
the
it.
king his
Do you
clothes
mind
or
if I
holding
fetch
the
it?
mirror.
I...
The king and queen
No.
also had an evening crew that did the process in reverse at the
No,
culture,
you
also
just
known
stay
as the
here.
going to
I'm
bed
sure you have
ceremony.
much to discuss.
About 100 people crowded into the royal
What game are
bedchambers
you
to
playing,
witness these
Castis?
ceremonies every day and every
don't
night.
know what you're
According to
talking
one
about.
courtier,
I'm
nobles
sure by
should
now
be
Elvis has
absent
told
as
you
little
about
as
the nature
possible
of
at the
our
king's lever,
relationship.
as well as at
She's
his bedtime
hardly as
ritual,
discreet as
better
I'd like
assert
to
their
be.
presence at court.
What business do you have with her?
Louis XIV had
I've
strong
had enough of these
aesthetics.
secrets.
Not only did he want his
Helpies?
palace and its grounds to look perfect, he wanted
Alice,
the people he
stop!
populated it with to dress
You
with the
betrayed
same level
me.
of detail.
You used knowledge I told you
Louis
in
XIV
confidence for your own
required palace
political...
It was for
courtiers to wear
Atlantis.
certain clothes for
Lies.
specific days or occasions.
Wait,
For example, at dinner, men had to wear their hats at the table, and because the clothes of courtiers were so tight and elaborate, the
This
meal
is
was
your
usually an
fault.
uncomfortable
Because
affair.
this wasn't enough,
Louis
huh?
XIV
You had
also
to
tied
steal away my
fashion with
father's
French
love,
identity
turn that
by
piece
supporting
against
French
me.
textile
You want to rule my
industries.
Dharma
He
too.
was so committed to
No,
supporting
it
French
had
craftsmen
nothing to
that
do
he
with
once
that.
burned his son's
Traitor!
clothes because they weren't
You're
made of
no
French
longer
cloth.
welcome here.
Millions of photos, videos, and paintings have been taken of the Palace of Versailles. But one thing
Here we
no
go.
image has ever been able to capture, its stench.
I need to get out of here.
Plainly put, the palace smells like feces. Feces. The thing is, plumbing wasn't really a thing at Versailles. The king had his own fancy facilities, but the vast majority
Oh shit, there's a lightsaber.
all they had were chamber pots. The lack of hygienic areas
Oh,
these
they let me
ladders
get there.
and bowels and courtiers did their business anywhere and everywhere, including the palace. Yes, the palace literally smelled like shit. But people who lived there adapted by dousing themselves in perfume to mask the smell. At Versailles, Louis XIV basically transformed the nobility into a class of servants. He bestowed his mark of royal favor by inviting specific high-ranking courtiers and members of the royal family to perform certain tasks, like brushing his hair or holding a candle. Tasks were highly regimented, and no two individuals could perform the same job. King Louis XIV loved pets, especially dogs. He even owned several Great Pyrenees, which were bred in Spain. The palace dogs had an allowance of 1,446 livres a year, roughly $20,000 by modern standards, and royal bakers made cakes for them every day. The king loved animals so much, he even established a royal menagerie at Versailles. The menagerie housed a wide variety of animals ranging from elephants to flamingos. But royal pets weren't the only animals at Versailles. It was common for courtiers to see animals, both feral and domesticated, just walking around the palace in a garden like it was no big deal. You could see lions, tigers, hyenas, and bears. That said, house cats were not welcome at the palace. Sorry, cat people. As we mentioned, people didn't just visit the palace of Versailles. A lot of people lived there. After all, the entire operation needed an entire service industry, and those people, roughly 10,000 nobles, government officials, and servants, all lived on the ground. So it's no surprise that living quarters for all 10,000 of those people were at a premium. Of course, there was a pecking order in regards to which courtiers got the best rooms. Higher-ranking courtiers tended to have better rooms than lower-ranking ones. You also knew where you fell in rank by how close your quarters were to the king. The closer you were to the king's room, the tighter you were with his entourage. There was also a chance to get a bump to a room closer to the king, but it required a lot of politicking. Because the opportunity to serve the king was a coveted privilege, courtiers were always trying to climb socially in order to get better jobs. Before we move forward, it should be known that these better jobs were some of the most demeaning jobs ever. For example, doing something as mundane and relatively base as getting the king's chamber pot was considered a high honor. These were entry-level servant jobs, but if you got to be the king's piss boy, you were doing well for yourself.
The way she thought.
So with all that said, jockeying for these different jobs was a game of shady politics. Some jobs could be bought, while others were bestowed to courtiers who had entered the king or queen's good graces. Louis XIV had a good idea when he filled his courtiers' days at Versailles with daily tornadoes filled with pointless ceremonies, unnecessary rituals, and frivolous entertainment. His thinking was that if his higher-ranking courtiers' days were filled with busy work, they couldn't A, leave Versailles without the king's permission, or B, plot his demise. So courtiers spent their time doing things like attending parties or watching the king do things as mundane as eat or bathe. As fancy and proper as the palace seemed, there wasn't a whole lot of exclusion in regards to outsiders. Versailles grounds were actually open to nearby communities. It was common for tourists to stop by Versailles, and guards allowed their admittance to the palace on the condition they follow correct etiquette. Unfortunately, local peasants and area drifters took advantage of their proximity to Versailles by frequently disposing of their trash on the perimeter of the palace's grounds. Still, with thousands of courtiers schlepping around their filled chamber pots all over the palace, a little extra filth from the locals was easy to overlook. As a result of the king's open-door policy, the palace's population swelled with the number of visitors on any given day. Imagining the stench, no wonder the French's perfume industry advanced so rapidly. Because courtiers were present during every waking moment during the royal family's existence, they were eyewitnesses to some fairly intimate moments. We've already talked far too much about the king's fecal rituals, but let's not forget other moments of royal vulnerability, like giving birth. Furthering the line of succession was a matter of political consequence, so when a new prince or princess was about to arrive, the queen's labor became a grand spectacle. Courtiers got first-row seats to royal births, often jostling and elbowing each other for glimpses of the scene. Their gawking served a purpose. Courtiers were supposed to vouch for the new baby and affirm it hadn't been switched at birth. King Louis XIV also made his courtiers watch him and the queen eat. Mind you, these weren't special dinners or meals of significance. Louis just wanted an audience. In Versailles, virtually every aspect of Louis XIV was on cue. The Grand Couvert was the dinner ceremony where the king and his family publicly took their meal in front of an audience. The opulent meal was usually meat-heavy and included such sides as pigeons, partridges, even truffled chickens. Courtiers and visitors who witnessed the ritual had to stand for the entire meal. Again, if the courtiers were too busy watching the king stuff roasted pigeon in his maw, they'd be too busy to overthrow his rule. Like most resorts, the Palace of Versailles was lovely when the weather was agreeable. During the sunnier season, its green, lush gardens, although offset by the smell of human waste and locals' trash, were majestic. But winters were rough. Winters mean courtiers were left freezing in their poorly insulated living quarters. The thing is, the palace was so large, fireplaces didn't heat rooms well. One visitor recalled in 1695, "It is so cold here that at the king's table, wine as well as water froze in the glasses." You think the Gatsbys threw great parties? Those shindigs were nothing compared to King Louis's bashes. Louis threw parties all the time, sometimes daily. As a matter of fact, one of the first large-scale entertainments at Versailles was the Delights of the Enchanted Island, a 6-day rager staged to celebrate the beginning of the building campaign for the Chateau de Versailles. The intention of this week-long party was to acquaint those involved, such as Louis's wife, his mother, his side pieces, his mistresses, and anyone else in his family, with the construction of the chateau. It was kind of like a let's meet the neighbors soiree to get things off on the right foot. With competitive races, lavish banquets, and theatricals by the popular playwright Molière, where he premiered La Princesse d'Alide and Tartuffe. In short, the Delights of the Enchanted Island party of 1664 was basically the Kentucky Derby, Thanksgiving dinner, and a Broadway performance all rolled into one giant party. The king was a baller. How would you feel about being a courtier at Versailles? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.
Living with schizophrenia can feel overwhelming. People think that I can't have a career, but I can. I work as a data analyst. I feel like my life has been on track.
Talk to your doctor about schizophrenia treatment options.
Fish roll, risotto, buffalo, gelato, curry, cacciatore, chimichurri, fried tofu.
This video is made possible by Vincero Watches, luxury handcrafted watches at fair prices. You can check them out at vincerowatches.com/biographics. He was a king whose reign outshone even the sun. Louis XIV of France was one of history's major monarchs, ruling with absolute power for nearly 3/4 of a century. In Europe, the length of his rule is unmatched. Globally, his reputation is nearly unparalleled. Under the Sun King's watch, the French experienced the Grand Siècle, or the Great Century, a period Voltaire called one of the great centuries of civilization. Art, culture, and fashion all flourished. Versailles was built. Power was centralized. Along its borders, France expanded, becoming the undisputed focal point of European Parisian life. But was there more to the reign of Louis XIV than a shiny French utopia? Born into a time of civil strife, Louis was a product of war. He fought constantly against his neighbors, against Protestants, and against the world. And even as his armies racked up victories, they sowed the seeds of Le Grand Siècle's bitter end. One of the great towering figures of history, this is the complex life of France's brightest
Until
royal
next
star.
time. We have only the finest.
Really, Mia?
We're not cribbing lines from Snoopy's typewriter. That is literally how the story of Louis XIV starts. Anyway, it was a dark and stormy night, and Louis XIII was cursing his awful luck. Thanks to inclement weather, the King of France had become trapped at the apartments of his wife, Anne of Austria. This was a problem because Louis XIII and Anne detested one another. Not in an arguing about the dishes kind of way, this was a hatred that burned so bright it could probably have been seen from space. As a result, the royal couple hadn't produced a single heir during their long marriage. That all changed that stormy night. Trapped together, Louis XIII and Anne evidently put aside their differences. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Anne was pregnant with the future king. At least, that's the official version. The unofficial one is that Anne may have been canoodling with her confidant, Cardinal Jules Mazarin, and the dark and stormy night was a story concocted to save everyone a bit of embarrassment. Whatever the truth, 9 months later, on September the 5th, 1638, the future Sun King was born. Almost from the moment he emerged, Louis XIV was being force-fed evidence of his own importance. Anne was a strict Catholic who told her son he was chosen by God to lead France, ever giving him the nickname Dieudonne, given by God. When Louis's brother Philippe was born 2 years later, she made the boy wear dresses and referred to him as my little girl, as if to remove any threat that he might pose to Louis's claim on the throne. Not that Louis's childhood was all pampered, though. For one thing, Anne's belief in God's plan for her son made her somewhat careless as a mother. The future king nearly drowned as a toddler because Anne wasn't paying attention. For another thing, Louis had been born into mid-17th century France, and mid-17th century France was a society devouring itself. Rather than a unified nation, 1640s France was badly fractured, with many provinces under de facto control of not the crown, but powerful nobles. When Louis XIII died in 1643, Anne and Cardinal Mazarin set up a regency to rule in Louis XIV's name and tried to rein in the power of these nobles. Unfortunately, those nobles would rather burn the world than let their power decrease. In 1648, France exploded into an ugly civil war known as the Fronde. This happened right in the middle of a war with Spain. At the Fronde's height, a Parisian mob stormed the royal palace, baying for Louis's blood. Luckily, this particular mob was less interested in recreational decapitation than most Parisian mobs, and they left Louis alive after the boy pretended to be asleep. Still, the incident badly scarred him. For the rest of his life, Louis would regard the French capital with utmost loathing. By 1654, Mazarin had won the Fronde for the crown. That same summer, the cardinal had 15-year-old Louis crowned king in a ceremony attended by almost no one. Not that Mazarin needed the crowns. He was the real power behind the teenage king, and everyone already knew it. But Mazarin wasn't the cartoon villain you're probably expecting. Although he kept Louis XIV on a short leash, he also taught him the dark arts of politics, how to manipulate people, how to convince them your great idea was actually their great idea. Gifts that would serve the young king very well. But Mazarin also gave the boy a gift that he was less happy with. When Louis decided to marry Mazarin's niece, Mazarin was all like, no, you're actually going to marry the Spanish princess to symbolically mark the end of this stupid war that we've been fighting. Just deal with it. And that was how, in 1660, Louis XIV came to marry Maria Theresa of Spain, a woman he hated only marginally less than his father had hated Anne. But if this seemed like an ignoble start for the king who would be the most celebrated in French history, just know that it's not going to last. Less than 9 months after his unwanted marriage, Louis would be stepping out from behind Mazarin's shadow and into the blinding sunlight.
With moderate to severe ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, your plans can change at any
Looks
time.
so peaceful from
Your
up here.
head wants to do one thing, but your gut says
It always
not
does.
today. GI-focused Intivio is made for this.
I know, Icarus.
Specifically in the GI
I'm tired
tract
too.
to prevent an excess of
So
white
many
blood cells
people.
from entering and causing damaging
Harkons,
inflammation.
Kings, and now
Intivio has
Isu.
helped many patients achieve
They're all the
long-term
same.
relief and remission.
Go do
It
this.
may help
Bring
you
me that.
too.
Go kill him.
Infusion and serious allergic
I don't know if I
reactions
can do
happen
this
during
anymore.
or after treatment. Intivio
If
may
I were
increase risk
ruler,
of infection,
things
which can be
would be
serious.
much
Although
different.
unlikely, a risk of PML,
What's
a
that,
rare,
Icarus?
serious, potentially
A speech
fatal
from
brain
your new
infection
ruler?
cannot be ruled out. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, experience frequent infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Liver problems can occur with Intivio. If other treatments haven't worked
bring
well
the food.
enough, ask your
You
doctor
bring the
about
wine.
Intivio. If
For
you're
tonight,
experiencing financial
we
hardship,
feast until our bellies are as round as the moon. That sounded good. You shouldn't sneak up on people like that.
On
I'm
March the
sorry,
9th,
I didn't want to
1661,
interrupt the
Cardinal Mazarin
Dicastis's
departed for the
speech.
great Catholic party in the
this was more
sky.
of a
The very next
fantasy,
day,
really.
Louis XIV
I
made
thought
a
it was
surprise announcement. He
wonderful.
would not be replacing Cardinal Mazarin
Just
with a new chief
Cassandra is
minister.
fine.
Instead, he would rule
You're
France
even more
as an
special
absolute
than all the
monarch.
bedtime
This
stories.
was one ballsy move
My
in
parents
17th
are
century
missing.
France.
They
Last
left for
absolute
their
monarch,
assignments, but
Henry
then I
IV,
remembered
ruled
the
ended
story
over
of you
50 years
helping
ago.
the lost
This
girl
was
in the
like
under...
Helmut Kohl casually announcing in 1995 that Germany was going to revert to a military dictatorship. But how would such a thing
name was
even be
Phoebe.
possible? But Louis was adamant. He had been put on earth by
She was
God
lucky
to
to have
rule
a friend like
France.
you.
And
I could
by
always
God,
make a
well,
new
he
friend.
was going to rule the heck out of
Maybe
France.
you, Alfred.
The show was serious.
And I could
Louis
help you.
paintings commission.
Would you like that?
More than anything.
You said your parents never came home. If you could tell me where they're assigned and what their names are, it would be very helpful.
Matter's name is Rene.
To himself
She's
as
assigned to
Roman
the carbon.
emperors and Greek
You're
gods.
very
He declared
brave.
himself Roi
Now,
Soleil,
go home.
the Sun King. This caused some rumblings among the nobles, rumblings Louis would have been ill-advised to ignore, including the front that nobles had started 11 civil wars in the last 4 decades. To paraphrase the old meme, one did not simply declare oneself above the nobles without a fight. But Louis did not want a fight. No, his plans for conquering the nobles involved using the subtle arts that Mazarin had taught him. But first, he needed a place to do it. Construction on the Palace of Versailles began in 1661, using as its core an old royal hunting lodge some 20 kilometers outside of Paris. Remember how we had said Louis hated Paris? Well, Versailles was an expression of that hate. 20 kilometers away may not sound like much, but when your main form of transport is horse-drawn carriage, it sure feels a lot longer. And that was kind of the point. Louis wanted to separate himself from the capital. He also wanted to separate his court from anywhere the nobles might have allies. If he could lure them away from their power bases, if he could dazzle them with opulence, if he could occupy their brains completely with courtly life, well, then they might not have enough time for civil war. At first, Louis's clever plan, it didn't quite pan out. Nobles declared Versailles is a mistress without a merit, a way of saying that it looked like a building site and there was nothing to do. But the Sun King didn't waver in his course. Although the court moved around endlessly in these days, it kept coming back to Versailles. And when it did, Louis ensured there was enough to occupy even the most Machiavellian mind. There were hunting trips, gambling, parties of such extravagance that engravings were made and sent as how-to guides to the other courts of Europe. Even the clothing worn was time-consuming. Louis decreed it must be French-made at enormous cost and that only certain people could wear certain colours. Naturally, this created competition among
to analyze the recently discovered coral permutations fastened to the hulls of our vessels?
Instead, scheming against one another over the right to
No,
wear blue
I'm
with
looking
gold.
for a
And
woman
Louis
named
backed
Remy.
all this
Yes,
weird
well,
etiquette with
that is a
action.
subject I
Nobles
have
who played by
absolutely
the
zero
rules found
authority
themselves
in,
getting
I'm
showered
afraid.
with gold.
I cannot
Literally,
help you.
That would be horrific, while those
The
who
sun
refused
is
were
very
suddenly
worried.
staring at empty coffers. Just as an exclusive new club can attract members purely because it is exclusive, the Sun King's court pulled in the nobles
What are you
purely because
doing?
being
I
there
like humans,
demonstrated
and
your
I like
ability.
Remy.
You can see this clearest in the weird rituals undertaken each day. Come morning, all the nobles were
Tell me
expected
where
to watch
she
Louis get
is,
dressed,
or
with
I'll cut
some
you.
even popping the king to his shirt. But rather than punishment, the act of dressing the king was
Find my
a
contact
reward,
not
an
far from here,
expression
but
of a
be
noble's
careful.
closeness to power.
The trap
And
has been
closeness
set
to
for
power
you.
You
meant money.
have
Before
made the
long, we had the
Dicastis
nobles
very
revolted
angry.
and fighting over objectively ridiculous rituals while he floated serenely above it all like some kind of ancient sun god. It was the first
You have
big step
compassion,
on the road
Dicastis.
to Le Grand Siècle.
You may be
It
the
wouldn't
only one
be
who
the
can calm
last.
the brewing storm between
Every time I
humans
closed my
and
eyes,
Isu.
I was having night terrors. I wasn't sleeping.
I'd seen better health ads, and I was like, I should give it a shot. I was paired with a really good counselor. Being...
While the great parties of Versailles may have been a way of dazzling the nobles, like waving a light bulb in front of a bunch of moths wearing tiny powdered wigs, that didn't mean the Sun King was all calculation and fun. One of the nicknames for this era was the reign of love, and it wasn't meant to be so suave, the love that a man has for a fine Cuban cigar. Throughout his reign, the Sun King had so many affairs he practically made into a spectator celebration. Louis de la Valliere paid honour to Louis' sister-in-law, Henrietta of England, who Louis started pretending to see as cover one of his other affairs, not sleeping with her anyway. But he didn't just stop with sleeping with her. Louise was elevated to the position of King's official mistress, which promised to be the most French concert ever heard, and she was kept in luxury at Versailles. Until Louis was eventually deposed and replaced by Marquise de Montespan. Her fast temper and looked so cutting she caused abject terror. Louis set her up in her own private apartment to join his own so he could have sex with her 3 times a day, and it resulted in having 7 children. Louise was packed off to a convent to live out the rest of her life in isolation. She eventually died and could barely manage a short. While the Marquise became Louise' main lover, she wasn't the only one. That Henrietta of England we mentioned earlier, Louis totally seduced her too. Not that Philippe likely minded, as he was himself sneaking off at nighttime trysts with both man's man, the Chevalier de Lorraine. In fact, this whole attitude of free love permeated the Sun King's court. Everyone was sleeping with everyone in a non-stop orgy of, well, orgies. But if that sounds kind of fun to you, just know that it was only for a tiny elite. Most of the regular folks of France were starving. Those working on the Versailles building site were barely making enough to afford food. Those who complained were thrown in jail. So, yes, the Great Century was great for most people in the same way that the Great Depression was great for the average human, i.e., not at all. Still, it's not like Louis was only playing mind games and making love. Despite having an adultery schedule that would leave even Boris with an exhausted Johnson, Louis found time to work for 8 hours a day on kingly stuff every day. Along with Finance Minister Jean-Baptiste Colbert, he overhauled the economy, building a network of canals, roads and ports in a handful of years that transformed French life. Louis was even slightly progressive for his time, promoting ministers from the bourgeoisie, the expensive nobles, much to these same nobles' horror. But the Sun King wouldn't be respected today if he just spent time building roads and dropping his pants. No, getting to the top of the European royals in the 17th century meant one thing and one thing only. It meant going to war. And just before we get into that, quick word from our sponsor today. If you want to look like European nobility but don't have the unlimited budget of that group, well, let me tell you a little something about today's sponsor, Vincero. I'm wearing one right now. This is the Vincero Rogue. Well, I've got a couple of others right here, sort of table next to me. This is a Chrono S, and this is their take on a pilot watch. They're all great looking stuff. For the Chrono S, I went for a nice blue background, silver outside. The pilot watch, black strap, black back, black bezel, looking good. Also, this Chrono S is actually a 38mm. I've got level wrists, so they make different watches for different sizes. So it's a brand new year, so why not start it off right? Put some confidence in your step with a great looking watch. I think doing that can really set the pace for a whole year. And I know it seems kind of like a silly small thing, but, you know, I mean, in many ways, it's just a watch, but it's so much more than that. A watch really, you know, makes you feel good. Vincero watches believe that luxury isn't about price or specification, it's about detail, craftsmanship, and Vincero watches, they've got a ton of that. So go check out the full range at vincerowatches.com/biographics. Use the code biographics on checkout for a special discount. Thanks to Vincero for sponsoring, and let's get back to it. The issue with going to war is that even in an absolute monarchy, your subjects cannot take very kindly to being killed to die on the battlefield without good reason. The economy was King France's Minister Colbert was eager to swell up some new territory, today called Belgium and Luxembourg. But while that was a good enough reason for Louis and Colbert, it wasn't wasn't for the public. So the Sun King set a in the 1660s, Louis announced that his marriage to the Spanish that the Spanish Netherlands should, for complicated dynastic reasons, belong to him. It was clearly the French king grasping at straws, but it was also enough. In May of 1667, Louis launched the War of Devolution, which should perhaps become known as the unprovoked invasion of Belgium. Although the French made great gains, international pressure from England forced them to mostly withdraw, leaving the Spanish Netherlands in Spanish hands. But despite this setback, the war wasn't a failure. For one thing, the early French victories and the fact Louis had withdrawn under diplomatic pressure rather than in the face of great losses seriously boosted his popularity.
How'd you get past my guard?
In many people's minds
I'm looking for the Mazis.
And why would the great Vicastis be looking for missing humans?
I never said he was missing.
Very clever. Hybrid. When my humans transport adamant to the experimentation chambers, they don't always return. Occasionally they fall through the cracks, like rats.
Then in 1672 he launched his re-invasion. The new French attack on the Netherlands was so successful it's still known in Dutch history
The little boy is worried about his father. Just tell me where this experimentation chamber is.
Your compassion for humans is unproductive.
Your hatred for humans is self-destructive.
Fine. It's in the garden of Kimoborgi. But you're wasting your time. The doors are locked.
And I'll just
You can try.
Louis snatched towns and cities from the Spanish Netherlands that would remain French until today.
You know, treating humans like vermin will get you killed one day. That day is today.
In Paris, he was given the nickname Praises. People lined up to sing his praises. Finally, the zenith Louis had imagined when he became an absolute monarch all those years ago. The Sun King at his daylight. The king had forgotten what happens to the sun after it reaches its highest point. Sex. Louis the XIV didn't know it yet, but the sun of his reign was already dipping towards the horizon. From here on out, it was going to be all downhill.
When you run a business, you run a path only you create. And when you find what works, the future is yours to shape.
From one perspective, the early 1680s should have been a time of triumph for Louis. In 1682, building work on Versailles was finally completed, allowing the Sun King to permanently station his court in the most opulent building on earth. From another perspective, though, the course of the decade had already been set. Its well was already poisoned. The trouble started in 1679. After the police investigation, many members of the aristocracy were visiting the fortune tellers. Act, but also using potions, taking part in black mass, and trying to poison their rivals. The sons of regulars were engaged in most damaging the king, his mistress, the Marquise de Montespan, was revealed to use black potions on them. The affair of the poisons was felt all across French society. Of course, the Sun King changed tack, ditching the party lifestyle, imposing sobriety and piety on his nobles, replacing the Marquise de Montespan with his servant and pious Mademoiselle de Maintenon. Of course, this was just the eyes of the public. Behind the scenes, everyone kept on gambling, drinking, and playing affairs. But it left a nasty taste in the mouth, one that poisoned the public against France's elites. But if the affair of the poisons was the catastrophe Louis could predict, the next disaster, well, that was of his own making. Way back in 1598, Henry IV had signed the Edict of Nantes, granting rights to the Protestants of France. Known as the Huguenots, they numbered around 1 million, most of them skilled artisans. In the 80-plus years since, they'd integrated into French society. But when the extremely Catholic Louis looked at them, he didn't see a group with a valuable skill set. He saw outsiders, invaders, a swarm of good-for-nothings. So the Sun King decided to do something about that. In 1685, Louis revoked the Edict of Nantes, replacing it with the Edict of Fontainebleau. Suddenly, tolerance was out and persecution and murder was in. Huguenot churches were destroyed, schools were closed, Protestants were sent into internal exile, and those who refused to go were executed. It was a cruel, senseless policy. It was also a spectacular own goal. As news of Louis's decrees spread, outrage swept the Protestant nations. Refuge was offered for the Huguenots in Prussia and parts of the Holy Roman Empire. in England. It's actually from these fleeing Huguenots that English gets the word refugee, and that's not all England got. Of the tens of thousands of refugees that came to England, almost all of them carried some vital skill. France lost so many of its best craftspeople that entire industries suffered. It's thought that today the Edict of Fontainebleau set sectors of the economy back decades. But from Louis's perspective, it had an even worse effect. Over in the Netherlands, the Protestant William of Orange was getting jumpy. Revoking the Edict of Nantes might be a warning sign Louis was going to invade again. To top it off, England had just coronated the staunchly Catholic James II. Without England on side in any future war, William knew the Netherlands was lost. So he decided to force England onto his side. In November 1688, William of Orange set sail at the head of a huge invasion force. If you ever heard that 1066 was the last time Britain successfully was conquered, that's only because William of Orange's victory was so quick that everyone forgets it. Within weeks of William's landing at Torbay, James had been captured and the entire country turned pro-Orange. The thing is, Louis could have almost certainly stopped the Glorious Revolution. Had he done so, he would have gained a Catholic ally in James II and a chance to crush the Protestant Dutch. But Louis was simply too arrogant to believe that God wasn't on his side, that England's Catholics wouldn't rise up and overthrow William. By the time he realised what a geopolitical screw-up he'd just committed, it was too late. Without a drop of blood being spilled, William and his wife Mary were made joint monarchs of England in January 1689, and just like that, Catholicism in Britain went into terminal decline, and just like that, Louis's fortunes went into terminal decline too.
Zarios?
Do you know where I could find him? The doors to the chamber are locked, and he's my last hope of getting in.
He's usually at the fortified
protect your family.
But
Now
he's
help
always
protect their
protected
air.
by guards.
That never stops me.
I don't want to sign another contract. I don't want a bigger bundle. What are these fees?
Is there something to me about it?
It's time to cut the cord. Introducing T-Vision Live TV Plus by T-Mobile. Get live news and sports for only $50 a month.
On July 1st, 1690, a huge French force gathered in Ireland to try and restore James II to the English throne. Instead, they were defeated in the bloody, bitter Battle of the Boyne, a Protestant victory that remains hugely controversial in Ireland. But by then, Louis already had other troubles on his mind. By 1690, France was embroiled in the War of the Grand Alliance. The War of the Grand Alliance, also known as the 9 Years' War, is one of those old-timey conflicts that's super complicated to explain without us launching a whole new channel named Warographics to walk us through it all. Since we don't have time for that, just know it was in part triggered by the impending death of Carlos II of Spain. A Habsburg, Carlos was so inbred that he was incapable of siring an heir. That meant who would rule Spain next was an open question. So Louis tried to make the answer to that question France, resulting in a long, bloody, inconclusive war that only petered out in 1697 when Europe was exhausted. What was the worst part? Well, everyone was about to do it all over again. 3 years after the War of the Grand Alliance ended, Carlos died for real, and Louis declared his own grandson Philip the new King of Spain. To be fair to Louis, he knew grabbing the Spanish throne would lead to another European meltdown, but he felt he had no choice. What if one of his enemies grabbed it instead? So, with a heavy heart, Louis pressed the doomsday button on Le Grand Siècle. The 13 years of fighting that followed were less the Great Century and more the crappy decade. France's forces were decimated. Territory was lost. At the same time that France was suffering on the world stage, the Sun King was suffering in private too. As the war progressed, Louis's son, 2 of his grandsons, his great-grandson and his great-granddaughter all passed away. In public, the energy of the Sun King's early years faded away, replaced by a melancholy that seemed to turn everything a dull midwinter grey. Remarkably, this misery actually won Louis public support. It was said the king was carrying the nation's entire grief in this time of war. When the War of Spanish Succession finally came to a close in 1714, the Sun King had almost faded away. While a late surge by the French had allowed them to keep Louis's grandson on the Spanish throne, it still felt like a failure. Philip had been excluded from the line of French succession, meaning Louis's dream of a unified France and Spain could not be realised. Not that Louis had much longer left to dream anyway. Louis XIV fell deathly ill at Versailles in August 1715. On his deathbed, the Sun King famously confessed to a surviving great-grandson of the future Louis XV that he had gone to war for vanity's sake and that his grandson should be like him. Then, with his final breaths, he declared, "I depart, but the state will always remain." The Sun King died on September the 1st, 1715. At the moment the sun set on his reign, Louis XIV had been on the throne for 72 years and 110 days. When he first became king, France had been the divided state, the French monarchy, a second-tier power. Now, as dusk finally fell, it was across France at the height of its powers. Paris was the global centre of fashion, art, culture. But if Louis thought in his last moments that the story ended here, he was wrong. Over the next 74 years, the system of government Louis had set up would ossify into the Ancien regime. In 1789, it was this regime that was overthrown in the greatest European upheaval of all, the French Revolution. But that's for another video. For now, it's simply enough for us to bid farewell to Louis XIV, to perhaps the greatest French king to have ever lived. He may have made mistakes. He may have been an autocrat. But the Sun King's life is destined to forever shine throughout history, visible even into the far distant future. For a king as egotistical as Louis XIV, well, that's exactly what he would have wanted. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below and don't forget to subscribe. Also, why not check out another channel from me called Geographics? If you enjoy this channel, you'll enjoy that as well. Thank you for watching.
Because I've lost 24 pounds in 4 months. It's incredible.
I've been on Noom for 3 months. I've lost 19 pounds, and I feel confident.
I have lost almost 40 pounds on me.
Oof. I'm so sorry to report. It's a really bad day for the victim of currency that really supports the faux video game journalism field, particularly populated by people with brightly colored hair who are perpetual victims. It's also a really bad day for just internet grifter feminists, as well as Brianna Wu has been completely getting roasted, and I'm here for it. If you're new to the channel, please make sure that you click that red subscribe button down below. YouTube does not recommend my videos. It's the only way you'll find them. I really, really appreciate it. Now, if you saw maybe a month ago or something like that, there was this video game journalist who got caught in 4K, essentially getting busted, calling men out for spicifying women in video games. It's not okay to look at beautiful women, and you're evil slime ball misogynist if you do so. Until the internet resurfaced maybe a dozen of her own posts doing exactly the same thing. It was one of the most spectacular caught in 4K moments I've ever seen. One of the best, most delicious hypocrisy displays I've ever seen. Now, this was almost 2 months ago now, and this person is still trying to milk this. It is, look, say what you want about Anita, at least she made money from her grift. You know, this person is so desperate to pretend they're the victim, except they have a long and catalog history of their own toxicity. And look, if you want to be toxic and other people be toxic and you want to sit together in the same pool,
like a perfect
that's
place
cool.
to hide missing humans.
But it doesn't give you the right.
Locked.
Then you can't go out and call other people toxic and whine about it. But of course, this person has been spending the last 2 months whining and saying that the only reason that they've gotten this feedback, that they've gotten this backlash,
more complicated
because
the
they happen
the bigger the
to possess an innie instead of an outie. Definitely men would never get dunked on the internet after being so blatantly hypocritical and judgmental. That would never happen. It's only if you're a woman, then the world is different. There's a quote here that says, "The scale of meanness that women journalists receive for doing their jobs is a major issue. We need accountability and real consequences. I am honored to write this piece on my experience and what we can do about this." Look, here's a, like, This person is the embodiment. And again, don't contact them, because that's what they want. They are the embodiment of the shoveling garbage opinions over the internet, over the wall. They're like, no, misogyny. Of course, the replies are absolutely hilarious. Opinions, garbage opinions, internet, misogyny, right there. Yeah, your 4K event tells another story. In fact, it can't be an immigrant. You know, again, you're a journalist, you do backlash to defend your stand on the public arena. Journalist is charitable, extremely charitable. That's called up for being critical. Accountability and counseling. All the lies double standards need to go. Again, you made a dumb Karen tweet. You got called out on your own hypocrisy and double standards. Subtly admitted that you love the attention while fighting the victim, and now you're still trying to get the I've seen this story before. I mean, nobody is buying this, but these dying journalism outlets are so desperate for hateful. By the way, the archive, but let's look at the actual gateindustry.biz. Again, little did I know that this week was such a debate that resulted in multiple attacks on myself, my character, and my work. The character was deservedly rightful. And on top of that, remember when you told other women that you were disagreeing with you said, get out of my bedroom, you're just here for a while? Remember that? Let's take a look at how we got Biz argument, because I'm sure feminists agreeing with it. Let's see here. I reply in there, here in ratio with the actual post. I like how you put this. How the author said these was plus 4K, spice it by women in multiple posts after calling them disgusting for it. She got backlash because she got backlash because she was a liar and fraud and got caught. Again, if you look, here's Lucy O'Brien, famous feminist from IGN. There's a lot wrong with this piece. Where is the sourcing? Where are the interviews? Where are the POC voices? Why aren't resources highlighted? GG is not a fantastic example of women standing up for themselves. I feel like even the feminists, and like, of course, again, you realize that women developers also get mean words. Yeah, okay, you guys can fight over the victim on staff, you start getting on with your life, and grinding. There's a common misconception there. Now that common like, well, I'm getting so much more negative feedback online than men. Men just don't whine about it. Men move on with their life by and large. They don't, or they monetize it smartly, like I do. And they don't whine and say they're only getting back on their men. I mean, my account has been, and multiple times, dogpiled by tens of thousands of foaming at the mouth far leftists, and I didn't say it was because I was a man. It's absurd to think that only women deal with this type of online issues. And then you see one of my favorites was Brianna Wu. My feminist guilty pleasure is to cleverly over spicified characters like Bayonetta. But Priya and Mithra in Smash, Pyra, these are literally two of their stupidest character designs in the history of our industry. There's a way to do this, but this isn't it. She deleted that tweet. It's essentially saying it's okay when we do it. And again, you don't have to play the video game. And everyone that replies say the line. It's absolutely hilarious. And the article in and of itself is, ridiculous. What a woman games journalist experiences in a week. The article is framed that simply for being a woman, they receive all sorts of backlash. You know why I even know about this hack? It's because they self-owned in such a nuclear fashion that I just had to look. It was like driving by a flaming car wreck on the freeway. Everyone's rubbernecking. That's what happens. It was one of the most hilarious self-owns, maybe in history. And in this article, as a journalist, it makes so many ridiculous claims that are not backed by any research. And that's not even to say the research exists or doesn't exist. They didn't even bother to put it in. You could put some things like saying, it's time we talk about a very serious issue happening within the games industry, but within the professional and
I've been waiting for you, Cassandra. Welcome to the birthplace of legend.
Journalist.
Who said that? Show yourself.
My name is Aita. I am a scientist, and in many ways, these are my
started it. She
created the Minotaur, the Cyclops, the Riding Dread. They're monsters.
Then, when people found out that she was a fraud, suddenly it's because she was a woman.
Imperfect beings striving towards our ultimate potential. Is that not why you're here?
United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization conducted a global
I'm here
survey
because a little boy's parents are missing, and all signs point to you.
And the results were frightening.
How very...
Are you joking? What happened early this year? By the way, here's the post. Men, I don't want to play the girl. Deal with it. This was supposedly, deliberately provocative, right? It is a straw man argument that implies that men are sexist, that men have a problem with playing as female characters, which is absurd. Some of the most beloved video game characters. You have the, what's her name from the latest Assassin's Creed everyone loves. Female characters in video games are something people don't want to play as. This is just another straw man, fabricated argument by the victim of Griff. Eventually, the tweet ended up being reposted from an account that has a reputation for controversial views with a caption, journalisming. I think that might be me. I mentioned was filled with hate towards my writing, and also my beliefs and even my looks. Okay? You implied that men don't like playing with as female characters, and they didn't like that. But you framed this entire thing as, I was just a woman having a normal opinion, and then the internet turned on me. This is one of the most ridiculous L's. I mean, it's like female journalists posting their L's online. Remember, whatever your name is, Forgotten Tomorrow, that when you publicly admonished another female who didn't share your same opinion and called her a clout chaser. Remember that, Mary?
Damaris,
no,
Nene,
I'm sorry. I don't
are you
think
here?
For whatever reason,
We're here.
I don't see it. Please, help us! That you wrote.
Vicastis, you're here.
As I mentioned in social media,
what are you doing here?
They
questioning
came
my
for me
career.
in the night.
They should.
I'll never
Sending
be
me
safe.
Shouldn't do that.
Don't
And
worry,
claiming
I'm
I should
getting everyone
disappear.
out
Well,
of here.
maybe find a different job. I struggle with what to do. No, you didn't.
Didn't
you
anyone
reveled
teach you it's
You
cruel to lie?
monetized it. You wrote this whole article. You got paid to write another
What's
article.
cruel is
about it. Are
abducting
you
and
joking?
experimenting on these people.
Without
There's a huge
sacrifice,
driving force in
there
allowing
can
this
be
type
no
of behavior.
progress.
It's been
Without
said.
experimentation,
It's been
there
said
can be no
that women
perfection.
are being mean.
You're breaking Poseidon's law.
Every 30
I
seconds.
am advancing
It's
knowledge for the
been
betterment
said.
of Atlantis.
This is peak
Poseidon's lack of
journalism.
vision keeps us in
Like, are you joking? It's been said. Ooh, hard-hitting fact. I mean, it's not true. You might as well just say it's not true.
Atlantis
but I'm
is
gonna
on
say
the
it
brink
anyway.
of war because of
This
Which is why we are properly arming ourselves.
Let these people go.
This is why
It's too
people
late
are
for
laughing
them.
at you. No, they should not be setting personal
So,
attacks at you. They
you've
shouldn't
seen the
be
beast she
doxing people. They
I'm
should
getting
be
these people out of
addressing
here.
your opinion,
Don't you want to know what's
exclusively,
behind this
okay?
door?
I don't support any of that. Anybody that watches
All
my
right,
videos
I'll
knows
play.
that.
Tell me.
Why tell you
decades on the
when I
court,
could show you?
he had built a reputation
Just know,
integrity,
to enter the chamber is to forfeit
and
their
for setting
lives.
aside
You
partisan
cannot have both.
interests in following the law.
What if I just killed you,
The
set
job to
these
which you
people
have been
free,
appointed
and
is
broke
very
through
different.
your stupid door?
And as I look back over the 8 years of the Obama-Biden Justice Department, in my view, the most problematic aspect of that tenure was that the Department of Justice was politicized and weaponized in a way that was directly contrary to over a century of tradition of the Department of Justice of being apolitical and not a partisan.
I can see you're struggling
to target your opponents.
What if I told you the greatest
So it is
achievement
very
in
much
Atlantis
my hope
is behind that door,
you're confirmed
and
as
that we
Attorney
owe
General,
that achievement to
that you will bring that
What are you
reputation
talking
for
about?
integrity to the
Through
Department
there
of Justice
is a
and
path to
demonstrate a
immortality
willingness
for you,
to stand up for what
us.
will be inevitable.
Embrace
political
your
pressure.
legacy. Forget these
To
miserable
once again
humans.
politicize the
Abandon
Department of
morality,
Justice
and the
use
answers
it
to
as a
all
tool
your questions are
to
just
attack the political
beyond
opponents
that door.
of the current
You will be reborn!
But I can assure you, I do not regard myself as anything.
Don't you want to know why you're really here?
For the people of the United
Free
States.
the people, and this door will remain.
I am not the president's lawyer. I am the United States lawyer.
Fuck your
and
door.
I will do everything
I promised a
in my
little boy
power,
I'd bring.
Which I
Very
believe is
disappointing.
considerable. To
No
fend
matter.
off any
If there are
effort by
two things
anyone,
Atlantis has in ample supply, it is adamant and
prosecutions or
human.
investigations.
Come on,
partisan,
let's get out of here.
Or political.
Thank you,
Anyway,
Thirsties.
my job
I'll get to
is
see
protect
Icon
the
again.
Department of Justice and its employees in going about their job and doing the right thing according to the facts and the law.
Will you commit to this committee that under your leadership the Department of Justice will not target the political opponents of this administration, and there will be real scrutiny? What that report outlines, among other things, is weaponizing Oppo research from the Hillary Clinton campaign and launching a criminal investigation based on that. Will you commit that that conduct will not be acceptable under any Department of Justice you're leading?
So, absolutely, Senator, but without trying to comment specifically on that matter, it's totally inappropriate for the department to target any individual because of their politics or their position in a campaign. The only basis for targeting has to be evidence of the risk of foreign intelligence problem or of a criminal problem. And that is a nonpartisan issue. That is a question of objective facts and law.
How can we ever repay you? Tell your son if an issue ever calls him a rat again, because this Cassandra will deal with them personally.
Investigations and prosecutions, there is no party. The department is an independent, nonpartisan
They've been experiment.
And that's my job to ensure that that's the case.
So Ted Cruz is looking for an example of a Justice Department that's been politicized and weaponized, and the first place he turns is the Obama administration? I don't know if Ted Cruz is still on that Cancun vacation mentally, but this is not a man who is thinking straight. So that we're clear, if you're looking for a DOJ that was politicized and weaponized, you really don't have to look further than the one that we had 4 weeks ago. It was Bill Barr's Department of Justice that opted to intervene to defend Trump in a defamation lawsuit brought by E. Jean Carroll, who accused him of raping her in the 90s. Does that sound like something our tax dollars should pay for? It was Bill Barr who helped block the release of Trump's tax returns, which were being sought to discover whether he had conflicts of interest in office. And yet somehow, the position of the nation's top lawyer was that we shouldn't have that information. Barr's DOJ threw out charges against Michael Flynn even after he pleaded guilty. The guy said he did the crime, and yet the agency tasked with following the law decided that this political ally of Donald Trump wouldn't be held accountable for breaking the law, even after he admitted to it. Barr even went on an international tour.
One thing I really miss is seeing people's smiles. Something I miss.
Who are asking a
One thing I really miss is seeing people's smiles. Something I miss.
Italian and British officials to discredit the Mueller report solely because it painted Donald Trump in a bad light. We could go on all day, but Bill Barr's entire career at the helm of the DOJ was spent doing Trump's personal bidding, often in flagrant and obvious opposition to the law itself. And when he wasn't helping criminals evade accountability and wielding the power of the federal government to act as Trump's personal law firm, he would even misrepresent the work of other government officials. Here's Bill Barr deliberately and flagrantly misrepresenting the contents of the Mueller report just before it was released in an effort to sway media coverage at the time.
So that's the bottom line. After nearly 2 years of investigation, thousands of subpoenas, hundreds of warrants, and witness interviews, the special counsel confirmed that the Russian government sponsored efforts to illegally interfere with the 2016 presidential election, but did not find that the Trump campaign or other Americans colluded in those efforts.
Only this claim was so glaringly false that a federal judge appointed by George W. Bush even criticized Barr, saying that he put out a distorted and misleading account of the Mueller report's findings. He even said that the differences between the report and Barr's summary, quote, caused the court to seriously question whether Attorney General Barr made a calculated attempt to influence public discourse about the Mueller report in favor of President Trump, despite certain findings in the redacted version of the Mueller report to the contrary. In fact, Robert Mueller himself was supposed to come out and state that if Trump didn't commit a crime, the report would have said so, and clarify that the reason Trump wasn't charged was because the special counsel's office was under the purview of the DOJ, and DOJ guidance says that a sitting president can't be indicted.
That investigation, that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime. The introduction to the Volume 2 of our report that decision. It explains that the long-standing department policy, the president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office. That is not constitutional. Even if the charge is under some public view, that too is acceptable. The special counsel's office is part of the Department of Justice, and by regulation, it was bound by that department policy. Charging the president with a crime was therefore not an option we could consider.
So for Ted Cruz to claim that it was the Obama DOJ that was politicized is a testament to how partisan he himself is. To sit there and grandstand to Merrick Garland, who himself was the victim of Republican partisan hackery, and tell him that he shouldn't conduct himself not like Trump's DOJ, but Obama's DOJ, tells you everything you need to know about how seriously you should take Ted Cruz. The fact is that Republicans, and especially Ted Cruz, have no leg to stand on when it comes to patronizing others about how to conduct themselves. Ted Cruz validated an insurrection of the U.S. Capitol, all in an effort to pander to Trump's voters and bolster his own eventual run for president. He also watched as his own state contended with one of the worst crises in our lifetimes, and he decided to slither away, not just to Cancun, but the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun. He then blamed his daughters, and then he implied that he always intended to come back the next day, even though his plane ticket was slated for the end of the weekend. Ted Cruz's entire career is partisan hackery and utter disdain, not only for the rule of law, but the very people who elected him to office. If he wants to judge anyone's actions for being improper, you might want to find a mirror. While you're here, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen.
When you run a business, you run with unknowns. You run with...
In medieval Europe, the Catholic Church held a level of power and influence over the population that is almost inconceivable today. This power came from a combination of factors, including persuasion, corruption, and coercion. But most of all, straight-up fear-mongering. Yes, the medieval church was heavily invested in the business of scaring the faithful into staying faithful. Today, we're going to take a look at how the medieval Catholic Church frightened its parishioners into obedience. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know what religious history you would like to hear more about. Okay, let's see some self-punishment for having done wrong. We're going medieval on you. These days, when people hear the term Hellmouth, they're most likely to think of the television series Buffy the Vampire Slayer, if they think of anything at all. Indeed, modern visitors to medieval churches and cathedrals would probably regard the frightening sculpted images appearing over the entryway as mere art or ornamentation. But for the populace of the medieval era, who were superstitious and uneducated, the image of the Hellmouth was nothing short of terrifying. The Hellmouth was typically depicted as a ferocious beast devouring sinners during the Last Judgment. It was the first thing that parishioners would see on their way into the sanctuary, and the message was crystal clear: obey the church, or this will happen to you. Wow, they were very, very subtle. Purgatory, in the Catholic religion, is an intermediate state that comes after death, where people can expiate their sins before moving on to heaven. In medieval times, churchgoers were extremely concerned about how much time they might have to spend there. Luckily, there were several ways a person could ensure their wait wouldn't be overly long. For example, they could donate money and goods to the church, attend services regularly, or even purchase a certificate that could get them an early release. But for those who absolutely, positively had to be sure they would skip purgatory entirely, there was only one surefire way: donate one of their children to the church. In ancient times, religions may have demanded human sacrifice to meet their gods, but the medieval church had a more pragmatic use for these children, namely, punishing their own numbers. The clergy, of course, is supposed to be saving, so the priests, nuns, and monks had fewer people than the general population. While these new recruits lived with children, the church preferred them because they were easier to own. Didn't families miss their children? Certainly. But in an era where poverty was common and many already had too many mouths to feed, there was no real choice. What's more, the arrangement could actually wind up being beneficial to everyone involved. For the child, they were intelligent, green, eating better, staying cleaner, and receiving an education. For the parents, the arrangement meant saving money and resources that could be spent on the rest of the family. However, while being raised by the church meant having a full belly, a warm place to sleep, and an education, there was also, predictably, a much darker side to the practice. Many children are known to have been victimized by church leaders in a number of inappropriate ways. Accounts of those who found themselves trapped in a miserable, abusive existence within the church have survived to this very day. To most modern observers, seeing a statue weep would be greeted by immediate skepticism. One might suppose the statue had been cracked and taken on water from some outside source, or perhaps deception was involved and some devious person placed a water hose inside the statue to create an illusion. Seeing a statue weep blood might make one suspect something rusty was leaking onto it. Yet even today we hear reports of people witnessing statues they believe are crying real tears or bleeding real blood. Often they believe these tears are sent by Christ or some other heavenly figure. So you can imagine how easily the overwhelmingly superstitious and religious population of medieval days would have easily accepted such a sight. Indeed, weeping and bleeding statues were commonly considered powerful omens of evil or sad events to come, an interpretation that was quite useful for a church seeking to encourage continued obedience. While you probably think there's no way to buy oneself out of having committed terrible sins, you'd be dead wrong. In the medieval era, as much as today, the church was quite fond of money, and the faithful could actually buy forgiveness with cash. If enough money was involved, nothing was unforgivable. Even more convenient was that you could purchase a pardon in advance for something you hadn't even done yet. Plan to rob or kill someone? No problem. Just buy yourself an advance pardon and have a good time. It was a great arrangement for those who could afford it, and it made the church a fortune. Call it your get-out-of-jail card for the afterlife. One of the church's other biggest moneymakers was selling tickets out of purgatory, and you could purchase one not just for yourself, but also for your deceased loved ones. Worried that your parents or grandparents have been denied entrance to heaven and are trapped in purgatory? No problem. Purchase the pardon card. For the right price, the church would literally issue you an actual physical certificate that proved your loved one was on the way to heaven. The pardon card. Don't leave life without it. Some things never change. For example, adulterers in medieval times feared pretty much the same exact things modern ones do. Namely, getting caught. These days, a revelation like that would probably lead to couples therapy or possibly a divorce.
You said you outlawed experimentation on humans.
That kind of exposure
All of it
would
was
be
lies.
an object of
These were out of control.
What are you talking about? The term walk of shame originated in that era. It was meant quite literally. Accused adulterers might be required to walk nude through the streets under the ridicule of friends and neighbors. Game of Thrones fans are probably thinking of Queen Cersei's famous walk of shame right
People
about now,
are suffering under your rule, and you don't even realize it.
Not surprisingly, despite this heavy punishment, adultery remained popular. For some, the
You should
shame
listen
is
to
part
her,
of the game.
you know.
Children. Impossible! You're forbidden from entering the city. God!
The aforementioned
Your
Hellmouth
guards
sculptures
respect
that
your
hung over the
sons.
church doors
And when
were
you
an
appointed
effective
that
mood
hybrid
setter,
as your
but they were only
dicastis,
the beginning.
your sons
Once
turned
inside
to
the
us.
church, the parishioner
Even my
would be greeted by
sons know better
images
than
of
to
the end
bow
of the
to a
world, the
warmonger.
Last Judgment,
The
and
humans
so-called
are bringing
doom
war
paintings,
whether we
which
want it
depicted
or
the faithful
not,
rejoicing with God in
They
heaven.
should after
while
what
the
you've
sinners
done.
boiled in
You
a
mean
lake
what
of
they've
fire.
forced us
That's
to
not
do.
all, though. Churches
Poseidon
were often
worries
filled
about
with
the sun
altarpieces,
and his
statues of
solar
tortured
floral
saints, and all manner
regeneration
of other
project.
images of sinners being punished
Catastrophe
in hell.
is coming
The
for
church
us.
employed the
On that
greatest
we agree. But there is only one catastrophe: humanity. You can't trust Eta. He's a lunatic. You have no idea the monsters he's trapped in his hidden lair.
It was hidden only to Poseidon. My wife knew everything about it.
Hybrid. Project Olympus was my idea. The end of a cycle in Atlantis doesn't have to be a catastrophe.
It's far worse. We've detected changes in the surface of the sun. If we don't prepare...
If we don't prepare, humans will kill us all. The only ecological catastrophe we face is the one we created ourselves. When I got here, Poseidon said I was where I belonged. Someone tell me why I'm really here, now! Such sadness. She's even more human than I expected. Eta, answer her.
Gladly. In you, we found opportunity. Imagine the possibilities if we duplicated your hybrid form. We could employ our technology to control your mind. You, hybrid, can be used to craft Juno's ultimate weapon.
Or rather, you could have been. My husband's experiment was promising, but after observation, we've decided you are a failure. Our new weapon is far deadlier than you could ever be.
The Ekatochires. Aida, you didn't.
I did.
The Ekatochires will rise. Project Olympus will strike fear so deeply into the hearts of humanity, they would never consider revolt. And you will declare my husband the Dicastis Vasilevs.
Dicastis, stop this. If they're successful, we are doomed. All of us. You have to trust me.
You, deal with these two. I'll find a way to stop their plans.
It's too late. The procedure was already a success. The Ekatochires lives. Can't you hear him stir?
You did this in my laboratory under the palace. Entrance was barred when I outlawed human experimentation.
What is that sound? Is that your weapon?
I will bring justice to these two, but I need you to stop the Ekatochires before it kills us all. Go!
Remarkable. You really are the greatest of the humans and of my people.
Where's Juno and Etta?
Imprisoned, for now. But they will not stop.
If imprisonment won't stop them, then leave them alone in a room with me. I'll make sure they never hurt anyone again.
And what would that prove? That you're as cruel as Juno and her husband?
I don't intend to prove anything. I intend to stop this, and save those that suffered because of your hubris.
So in the end, you brought judgment to Atlantis after all. Very well, Gastis. Do you still have Cerberus' device?
Is this finally over? I can go move on to a different game.
I didn't tell you everything about your stuff. It is a bridge between your two selves. But by coupling it with the powers of the devices you retrieved from the Cerberus and the Gatohires, we can end Atlantis' cycle forever.
I wasn't just awakening my sixth sense. I was unlocking the power to destroy the entire city.
In the wrong hands, the staff has the power to destroy everything. That is why you, and only you, could be its keeper.
You act like you knew this would happen.
I'm tired, just as you are. I waited many cycles for Atlantis' final judgment to come. I only wish it had come sooner. Think of the suffering it would have prevented.
If we do this, you and your sons...
My family have had generations to show kindness, modesty, temperance. We refused, and in so doing, this choice was made by us as much as by you.
The humans in this city don't deserve to die.
When we do this, the horns will wail and the animals will be set free. Humans in the Borimos Ring will know to take their boats. I assure you, they will escape.
If we sink the city, but I'm in it, then I die too.
No. You are the keeper of the stuff. It will protect you. Unfortunately for you, now is not your time.
You said it yourself. Juno and Aida will never stop. I've seen those laboratories, the experiments in them. There's only one way to end the suffering here. Destroy this place.
My one wish is that I had more time to learn from you. In time, I may have learned to be more human.
Here, Poseidon.
Keeper of the Staff, your trials are over.
Back in the throne room.
Tell me, now that you have seen the fate of Atlantis, how do you feel?
You want to know how I'm feeling? I'm tired, Alethea.
Your burden is great, Keeper. The staff will replenish your physical body, but with time, you must learn that your strength comes from within.
So what was all this?
What you have experienced are echoes of memories, distorted, but no less real.
Whose memories?
The issue. Some were even my own. In my time as Dikastis, I also tried to bring balance to Atlantis, but it wasn't enough.
You?
And now you.
My trials forced me to reunite with my grandfather, Phoebe, Brasidas, even Elpinor.
And in so doing, you passed a valuable trial. The staff has the power to prolong life. That is not your role. You must learn to say goodbye again and again, but let death take what it will from this world.
Were they real?
They are with you always, so yes. In time you must let them go, but that will be another trial.
My trials in Elysium brought destruction and rebellion.
Not due to you, but Persephone. She was a ruler who controlled her domain through extreme order. In so doing, you saw that her rule was doomed to failure.
In the underworld, I was forced to endure a realm of pure chaos.
Indeed. Hades was a king who invited that chaos, and devastation came with it. But know this, you will be forced to endure far worse suffering before your death has come.
Elysium and the underworld were doomed. But in Atlantis, I almost thought Poseidon and I could do some good.
Yet there you discovered the issue as we really were. Flawed. No matter how many times I have seen that echo of memory, my home always meets destruction.
I'm ready to leave. You coming? We are entwined after all.
You saw Persephone rule through order, Hades through chaos, and even had a taste of being a ruler yourself in Atlantis.
It was a disaster.
You have seen there is no path to power for the Keeper. In the staff, you have the ability to bring this world to its knees, but that is not your role. You must use your strength to restrain the power of the staff, to guard it, to keep.
My mother once told me I was sent by the gods to protect this world. I gave her my word. And now, I give my word to you.
And what of your word, heir of memories? You must wake up and redeem yourself before it's too late, or it will be you who tears this world apart. Now awake! The interloper has found you. Wake! Now!
No! Where are you?
Talking to yourself, Layla Hassan? Clearly the Isu artifact has had quite the effect on you. You're going mad.
Mr. Berg, you finally showed up.
Most impressive. I knew if anyone could discover this place, it was you. But you left Abstergo before you could be assigned this mission.
Sigma 6 found it just fine after you tapped into our comm signal. We know it was you.
Correct. What you don't know is that I've been listening in for much longer. Ever since you found the Book of Herodotus, from Templar research I'm sure you stole.
Abstergo are murderers, and you're nothing but their killing machine.
A righteous claim. And what of the Sigma team I dispatched earlier to find you? You killed them.
Look, I saw your files in the Abstergo database. I know about Alina. If you knew what the staff could do for her...
Don't say a word about her.
Then forget it! I was trying to compromise.
No compromising. The artifact is coming with me.
You had no right to do what you did to Deanna. You should have come after me!
You're always next on the list. I'll check you off today.
You're a real Yahomar, so this is over.
Indeed. The world outside is coming to its inevitable end. Whose side you're on won't matter anymore. Come. Hand over the staff.
It does matter. I'll always be an assassin. And if you want the staff, you're gonna have to take it from me.
First Victoria, now me. Admit it. You can't handle the power of the artifact.
Wanna know my favorite thing about the staff?
Don't gloat.
It's the... immortality.
Petty to the end.
The thing is, Mr. Berg, I don't care if you live or die. You just gotta get out of my way. Face it. Templar's lost. Altair 2, come in. Altair 2, come in! Atlantis has been compromised.
My legs.
Alethea? Alethea! Okay, think, Layla. Your comms are broken. How do you get help?
can't do this without you. I try to hide it, but I'm scared. I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm alone. I need you. Please, come back. Send me a sign, at least. Anything. Your earpiece. Can anyone hear me?
Victoria, we've been trying to find a way to force communication. First, we lost everyone's vitals, and
Elena.
then...
It's me.
Layla? How? This is Victoria's channel. Where is she? What's been happening down there? Did you finish the trials?
Yes, we have the staff. I finished our trials, but...
That's incredible! An actual Isu artifact in assassin control. This changes everything.
I'm not in control, Elena, and nothing's changed. Also, Berg is the interloper. He's in the throne room with me. Look, I'll explain everything, but the Templars know what we're doing, and they're after us. I need you to get me out of here.
With you? Are you safe?
We fought. He passed out, but he's stable. Please don't make me check on him.
You didn't kill him?
No. He's still alive.
Sit tight, Layla. We're coming for you, but it might take time. What are you gonna do?
Until you get here, I'm going back into the Animus. There are a lot of people to say goodbye to.
Until I Valhalla when I get it back. game is finished.
Stay hidden if I don't want to fight. Prisoners. The Morgis wouldn't like it if I freed them. Prisoners mentioned in the letter. I should free them. Antidis? Is that you?
Sandra? No! Why did it have to be you again? Go away! Help! Someone else! Help! Help!
Keep your voice down.
No, no,
The
no!
guards
I
will
owe
hear
you
you.
enough, Cassandra!
Antidis, my proud friend. What's happened to you this time?
The gods are not fair to Aeantidis. I spent my wealth, but those Malakas so...
This isn't my fault. It's your...
Yes, I, Aeantidis, am proud. And I will...
I could hardly leave you to rot in that...
You just can't leave me out of your heroic deeds, can you? Now what can I do? I have nothing, Cassandra.
Antidis, the Greeks are indebted to the gods.
Of course we are. We can never repay their gifts to us.
I am the messenger of Zeus.
What? This is worse. How can I ever repay my debt to you?
As a god, I can forgive your debt. Can I not?
Yes.
I could use you on my ship. Barnabas may hate me, but you'll be...
I, Aeantidis, will never be indebted to anyone. Except a god.
I'll see you on my ship.